When we first gazed upon the glory of Installation 07, we would speculate who our next enemy would be. And a ring with an enormous amount of Flood backstory, would they return in Halo's next installment, or would we fight someone new? And now we finally have that answer, and although they don't appear in the main campaign, we do have references to the Flood, some new hints, and even ways that they are already in the game. Let's talk about the Flood returning in Halo Infinite. So here's some backstory on the Flood on Zeta Halo. Long ago, this ring was actually home to ancient humans. They would live their lives normally, and this might explain some of the human Silaxes we see throughout the campaign, and the Forerunners would oversee this ring and sort of supervise it, I guess. Now, we know that Forerunners interacted with ancient humans in good and bad ways, which we've seen from cutscenes like the ones in Halo 4 with the Composer.
Humans, your kind brought the Flood to our shores. Now you will aid in ending its threat.
The Forerunner Master Builder Faber would betray the Librarian in secret and began experimenting on these ancient humans with Flood experiments. These involved some pretty gruesome scenes and took place in various locations throughout the ring. They called them the Palace of Pain, but it wasn't one specific location, but many different ones spread out. What the Master Builder learned here was that humans appeared to be immune. The Flood were not infecting them. Now you're like, wait a minute, I've seen them infect them in Halo 3, that's definitely not the case, and you would be right. Although this is what we heard here, it was actually part of the Flood's plan. They were trying to target Forerunners specifically. Faber and the Forerunners would experiment with humans in the Flood for many years, even bringing more humans from Earth to take part in this torture. One day, an ancient being would awake on the ring after the installation was test-fired, and this was the Primordial. The Primordial was believed to be one of the last precursors and eventually became what we know as the Gravemind. The Primordial was responsible for breaking many characters and sort of corrupting them, like Faber and also the AI Mendicant Bias, who opened all the Flood containment facilities on the ring, allowing the parasitic alien species to spread. So think about that, at one point in time, basically this whole ring looked like this. Flood infection forms roamed the place trying to infect whatever life there was, and the ground was covered in these Flood spores just littering the place. So the ring has a pretty extensive backstory with many events that took place here, but this was the beginning for the Flood. A time later in 97,445 BCE, Despondent Pyre tells us that the Flood were destroyed here after the ring was activated.
The Flood are ended. The reintroduction phase has begun. Countless preserved species have been sent back to start lives anew. Halo was the Forerunner's terrible and ultimate solution to the parasite's relentless advance.
Now a cool little side note, this firing, the same one that destroyed the Flood, is where the Forerunners realized that there was another species out there called the Zalanin. This is the endless species we hear about in Halo Infinite who are able to survive the firing of Halo rings.
Designed to destroy all sentient life, nothing was allowed to survive. And we were sure that nothing had. We were wrong.
So one day the Forerunners decided to meet up with them. They brought Installation 07 closer to one of their planets and then said, yeah, meet us here in the Silent Auditorium. And when the Zalanin arrived, they trapped them all here.
There is to be a parley. A meeting. Highly unusual. I have moved Installation 07 into sufficient range of their homeworld. Delegates are en route. From both sides. A necessary contingency, considering these unique circumstances. The Council has also provided me with an additional and curious directive. We must understand the extent of what their kind can truly endure. There are facilities on this ring quite ideal for conducting such tests. It is time for the Silent Auditorium to serve purpose once more.
In Infinite now, we can actually see hints of the Flood in multiple places. First, we have a Silax with a Flood infection form. This can be found near the Tremonius boss fight in a room off to the side. I'm sure many people missed this, and I found it on my second or third playthrough. So these little creatures are the ones responsible for spreading the Flood infection and are seen everywhere where there are outbreaks. Zeta Halo was used to study the Flood as we discussed, so this may explain why it's still here. But with characters able to bring back species like we see Atriox did, some spoilers there, this means of course the Flood could return as well. And just this one little infection form could create a whole new Flood army. Now there's also always the possibility of DLC. 343 has many different ways they can go with the future of Halo, and that's where this leads us next. Some new leaked dialogue straight up talks about a Flood game mode, perhaps like the one 343 had back in Halo 4, where one of the characters you played actually was the Flood.
Flood. Survive against the Flood to win.
So it could just be for that, a multiplayer mode of infection. But there's also lines that reference a firefight-like Horde mode.
Incoming! 1v Horde.
So the Flood are definitely still around, and we might see them sometime soon in Infinite in one way or another. I mean, even Halo Wars 2, 343's previous game to Infinite had Banished and the Flood, so I'm sure we'll see them at some point.
Prepare yourselves.
Anyway, that's all we got for today's video on the Flood in Halo Infinite and Zeta Halo. If you'd like to see some more Halo and Destiny lore and mysteries just like this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Anyway, I thank you very much for watching. My name's Evade, and I'll catch you all in the next video.